How do you manage the expectations and dreams against the sustainable responsibilities and the realities of running a club?
It's a huge challenge for us right now, to be honest, because again, having been so long in the Premier League, we will almost take it for granted, me included, but I'm talking about our supporters, our sponsors, our stakeholders. They've been used to the Premier League for a long time and consistently. We all want to be aspirational. We all want to reach for the stars. What people would deem to be mediocre is actually us overachieving if we were to lay everything down. But nobody wants to, me included, nobody wants to just accept mediocre. For us to even get close to what people's expectations are is back to what we've already spoke about. Every single one of us need to overachieve.
Can you give us an insight as to what makes the club special or what makes it different?
I think a big driver in anything that happens at Ross County is our chairman. And his culture and his values are all over the football club. So our strapline is to be more than just a football club.
Welcome to Football Business Television for the latest edition of the CEO Show. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Stephen Ferguson, the CEO of Ross County. Stephen, how are we?
Well, thank you. And looking forward to getting a chat with you this morning.
Yeah, and I just mentioned a bit. I've been looking forward to this one. I think we'll jump straight in. Your journey is a very different one, right? From player to manager to CEO is a pretty incredible journey. I'd like to find another one. I'm not sure there is. Did you ever imagine that it would turn out like this?
In a word, no. Definitely did not. But again, I think when opportunities come up, you just need to be brave enough to kind of walk through the door when the door's open. So I've been really fortunate and lucky, I suppose people would say. But no, my journey is a unique one, but it's certainly one I've enjoyed, and the challenges keep on coming, I suppose.
Does the kind of the original love for the game keep you coming back for more? Because, like you said, very different challenges, right? From the pitch to the touchline to the now boardroom. And I'm assuming at the heart of that, there must be an insane love for the game.
I think there needs to be. I genuinely do. I think it doesn't matter what role you're in, whether it be a development academy coaching kind of role or a first team management role or even a chief executive. The challenges are real, and the challenges are every day. And it's 24/7. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think I've had a pound for everybody that said to me I should be delegating this or I shouldn't be doing that. Then I'd be a wealthy man, or a wealthier man than I am. That's for sure. But I think it is the love of the game. I think it's that drive that you have from an early age, that enthusiasm that you have for an early age. It's always there and it's always burning. So it really I suppose drives you and pushes you into the next challenge and the next task.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We speak to lots of ex-pros that have gone on to do things, some incredible things in business, and that's something they all have in common, right? Is there's that natural drive that's driven by the original love of the game that probably started as early as like 4 or 5 for most people. Was there one moment or a particular time that made you think, actually, that my future probably lies in leadership in the boardroom as opposed to the dugout?
To be honest, there wasn't. It actually happened relatively quickly. I probably had at most kind of a discussion possibly 6 months before the transition kind of happened. So, but I was still the co-manager at the time. So I was still fully focusing on what was happening with that job, knowing in the back of my mind at the end of the season that Stuart and I would split from being co-managers of the first team to then me taking on the chief executive role, which the club never had a chief exec. So it wasn't that I was replacing anybody. It was just a kind of restructure at club level, at board level, that they were wanting somebody in that role, and it was very much learning on the job from there. It wasn't that I had any aspirations. It wasn't like I'd done any background and what was the difference between being in the dressing room to being in the boardroom. It was very much learning on the job and I suppose embracing the challenges that I didn't quite know what was coming.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure you didn't get time to nip away and do a quick MBA in business management before you decided to take the step.
No, I didn't. You're right, and I did very quickly take a partner course with VSI down in Manchester, just that chief executive in a sporting organisation, and I'd done that because it was completely new. It was brand new territory. If I looked at my contact list, or I looked at certainly people that I had that I would have no problems picking the phone up to or going and visiting, they were all football people. They were all coaches. They were all managers. They were all agents, and I didn't have a network of sporting directors or another chief executives or chief operating officers or financial directors. They weren't in my phone, they weren't in my network. So I kind of had to make a conscious effort coming out of that football bubble and entering into the business bubble.
Yeah, it's a very different group that you need to be in touch with, right? That the ex-players and coaches and management staff is definitely one kind of group. And then, like you said, the execs is almost a completely different um, demographic of people, let alone different types of personalities and backgrounds and where people come from, maybe a bit more global as well. Do you think that your grounding as a player or your background as a player has shaped who you are as a CEO?
Yeah, I would say so. I would always. I mean, if you look at any sort of leadership journey, I think only when you look back that you realise that your leadership journey starts as a follower. You actually start to the people that you're following, the leadership you're following when you're a player or when you're a young player to even a senior player. Um, you know, the traits of leadership are all around you from the beginning. So only now when I'm kind of in this role and I've been asked to speak at things in the past, and you look back and you start to find really early in your career where I suppose your leadership style was starting to be formed and starting to be shaped, and I suppose it's just a case of continuing that to the present day.
Yeah, yeah. And you've moved into a role where you probably have to make more tough decisions than ever before, even than the manager, I guess, because you're taking care of so many different departments. Did you have personal values that guide your business decisions?
Yeah, I think any decision you make, I think it has to be, certainly the way I would work anyway. I think it's a minimum, 60% gut for me, and 40
Yeah,
40% the other way, maybe even a little bit more than that. So I always think any decision that I would tend to make or tend to be involved in comes from what I stand for, and comes from kind of from me as a person, how I'll come to the answer to that. Obviously, you need to use facts, you need to use data, you need to use analytics to come to help you in that decision. But I think it's really important that the values that you've had throughout your life, throughout your working career, I think they have to shape your decisions, because if they didn't, then it wouldn't be you that would be making the decision.
yeah, very good point. And I think that people overlook a lot of the personal relationships in those kind of decisions as well. Now, with the rise of data and analytics and everything studied to minute details, but I'm a big fan of gut reactions as well. And my missus will tell you that I don't think she's had anyone wrong over 21 years, according to her. So yeah, there's definitely a big role for that to play. What do you think the biggest misconception is about your kind of day to day role as a CEO of a football club?
I think it depends what club you're at, and I think it depends, obviously, the size of your club. We're a small community club based in the Highlands of Scotland, so some of the things I'm doing as the chief executive would be frowned upon, I suppose, if you were a chief executive at a bigger organisation. And I totally understand that. I totally get it. You have to deal with what's in front of you. We don't have a sporting director, we don't have a general manager, we don't have a chief operating officer. So there's very much at a club like ours. It's not just me, but people wear many different hats, and so and you definitely have to get your hands dirty. And people will think that maybe the title would suggest that you're sitting in your ivory tower looking down on all your staff, and it's just not that. That's just not the case.
No.
It is all hands to the pump. And yeah, you have a responsibility for your staff, and you have a responsibility for making that final decision. But you're also in and amongst it as well on the day to day side. So I think that's probably, it could be it could be yeah, it could be seen that as something different to actually what it is.
Yeah, you're certainly not sitting at the top of the tower counting the pennies and watching the peasants, that's for sure, right?
No, that's for sure. That is 100% sure.
What part of the role do you find the most challenging? And I suppose the B side to that question is what's the most rewarding part of it?
Yeah, of course. When you work at a football club, and whatever role you are, winning games on a Saturday is there's nothing beats winning a game on a Saturday in 3 points. I suppose that again that's a really small way of looking at it, but ultimately the result on a Saturday dictates usually how your week's going to go, and how your decisions are from moving
Yeah,
forward. Certainly some of the challenges for me, some of the difficult parts for me is change is a big thing. People don't like to change. And when you've had success in the past, it doesn't, ways of doing things don't last forever, and the game's ever evolving. And certainly football is so fluid that, you're constantly changing, and um, sometimes implementing that can be difficult. And sometimes, even people that are closest to you can have a can have a challenge accepting change. I think that in my role, I think strategically you're always looking for staying ahead of the curve in every way that you can, and sometimes that means making changes, and sometimes making changes to things that have been a success that you
yeah,
feel has kind of run its race. So that's a challenge. Managing managing expectations is also a big challenge. Perception to reality and all that stuff is difficult. And I suppose to give you another thing I find challenging is defining success, because sometimes you're always the goalposts continually move, and sometimes when you feel you're just about to cross a line, the goalposts move, and you're on your way again, and you just feel that you're always chasing. And sometimes it would be nice to actually sometimes just take a step back and look at actually being able to define success not only for yourself but for your staff and for everybody else. So sometimes you need to take a breath.
yeah. I think the phrase "victim of success" was probably built for football, right? Because you can become successful, and like you say, you have to ever evolve because everybody else is, and you can be a hero on a Saturday and a villain on a Wednesday. It can be as short as that, or even building on champions, winning teams, or whatever is difficult. You have to evolve. I dare say, because of the amount of hats you wear, there won't be a typical working day, or it'll be pretty varied because of the different roles that you've got to kind of fill. But could you talk us through what the most typical day would look like for you?
Um, Again, it all revolves around people for me. So again, you're only really going to be as successful as the people that you've got around you, and I continually try to get people that are better than me doing the role that they're getting asked to do. So there's a lot of trust for me. There's a lot of working with individuals that then work within a team. So I would always continually try to communicate properly with the people across all the departments. Make sure I know where everything sits. I need to make sure I know, that if there's anything I can do to make their job easier, or if there's any support I can give them to get something over the line or make their job easier. And I think that only comes with relationships, and I think that only comes with good communication. And I think you've already said it. You're constantly looking at how you can do it better, and that's kind of my role to then cascade to the rest of the team, and then support them and trying to be successful in whatever their task is.
The quest with no finish line. It's forever. I think you've signed up for.
I think that's how it feels, and I think
Yeah,
I think that's why it is good to, and it can only happen at certain periods of the season where you can take a breath and you can actually look back, and you can actually look at what's been achieved, before you then set off on where you're going next. And it's not that you're resting on any laurels, and it's not that you're taking anything for granted. But if you continually push all the time, you're always trying to, you miss the gain because you're focusing on the gap all the time. I suppose that's probably the best way to describe it. So, and again, for everybody, it's not just me that works continuously and has continually got challenges. Everybody has at the football club, whatever role that they hold. So again, we need to be a collective, and we need to celebrate successes and celebrate small wins when we can, but also get around each other when things aren't going so well. And I think when things are going well, things are easy. It's easy to have these conversations. It's easy to communicate things. But I think when things aren't going so well, and that's one guarantee in football, that it's peaks and troughs. So I think it's really important when things aren't going well that communication and that relationships with people in and around the football club become even more important.
Yeah, I agree. You're certainly not too lonely when you're winning, right? It's
No,
never,
everybody's
never,
pal when
never
you're
short of a friend. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we became CEOs at similar times. I didn't realise that until this morning, actually. But yours in a much higher pressured situation for sure as running a football club during COVID, right? And it was the most challenging time for the world for obvious reasons, but in football, a particularly challenging time. Really tough on the job, quick lessons to be learned. Did that period teach you anything about leadership that you didn't already know, or that you might not have picked up had that not been the case?
I think so. I think it would be crazy to say otherwise. I think I don't know if I benefited or I suffered from taking the role as chief executive at COVID during the COVID period because I actually didn't know what it was like to be a chief executive before COVID.
Right.
So whatever I was going to be doing was going to be new. It just so
Yeah.
happened that it was during the COVID time. So I sometimes wonder if I actually stole a march on that one because I couldn't compare what it was like before COVID. So
Right. Okay.
that was kind of where I don't know if that was me trying to work with a glass half full than rather than empty. But I certainly found that unbelievably exciting is the wrong word, but intriguing. The whole
Mm,
that whole period where there was really tough decisions to be made. There was real restructuring and making sure that first and foremost your football club survived and came out
yeah.
the other side. And then not only when they came out the other side, they were then able to hit the ground running as soon as it was out the other side that you could start to make some ground up again. So yeah, it was a challenge. What I will say, what I have found is knowing being involved in football pre and post COVID is that for me the game and people have changed unbelievably since that period, and I almost think that things post COVID to where we sit now, 6 7 years post COVID, sorry, um, I just think that the game's almost and people are almost unrecognisable from that 6 year period.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. I think you see it socially as well, right? And football can be a big reflection of society, certainly in certain regions. I've absolutely seen that myself as well. And similar to you, I took over an events business that couldn't host events, and luckily, just by chance, I had a background in publishing and TV stuff, so it was relatively easy for me to pivot to producing the events online. Whereas other people in the market were like, "Oh my god, we're scrambling. We don't know how to make this physical thing become, an at-home thing." Where I was like, "Actually, that's kind of what I already did." So it certainly helped, but I would prefer it hadn't happened for obvious reasons. But
No,
yeah, it's certainly a steep learning curve. Um, Ross County, getting back to the club side of things, is really unique, right? Geographically, financially, you said you operate very differently to lots of clubs, and certainly maybe outside the top two or three clubs in Scotland. Can you give us an insight as to what makes the club special, or what makes it different?
I think a big driver in anything that happens at Ross County is our chairman. He's obviously Roy McGregor is a local man that has continually run his international business from the Highlands. I think somebody once challenged him that you couldn't run an international business from the Highlands, and I think he took that as a red rag bull there. So
Personally,
he's took that one personally for sure, and he's continually invested in Ross County for not for only success on the pitch, but for the area, for the community. To give young players in the Highlands the opportunity to play professional football and not have to move away from the area was a big thing for him when he took over the reins. When we entered the Scottish League was 1994, I think, so maybe 32 years ago or such. But and his culture and his values are all over the football club. So our strapline is to be more than just a football club, and that certainly in the early part was the big driver. It was about growing a fan base. It was about growing relationships and within our community. And when we talk about our community again, our community is slightly different to everybody else's. Our community is the area is probably the same landmass as Belgium as the country. So, our community is the Highlands, the far north of Scotland, and the Highlands of Scotland. So, we do have a huge area to cover. in a huge area that we feel responsible for, which again is the DNA of the football club. We've never shied away from that. That becomes challenging when you're in the Premier League. We're 12 years in the Premier League, 12 or 13 years in the Premier League, and that in itself, becomes more of a challenge because of the coattails that you're trying to hang on to,
Yeah,
and everything becomes a little bit more under the microscope. Everything becomes a little bit more challenging criteria wise. Just basically hosting the likes of a Rangers or Celtic coming to the Highlands and coming to Dingwall, who have, we've 6,500 seats in the stadium, and we've got 6,500 people in our village. So there's a seat for everybody if you want to come. But I know you'll understand as well that competing at that level and hosting events like that it really does push everybody to the limits. It really does push you to almost bursting at the seams to be able to do it. And we've always managed to do it, and we've always managed it to do well. We have a challenge on our hands at the moment. We were obviously relegated from the Premier League last year, and we're finding a real challenge in the Championship this year. And that's football. That is the ebbs and flows. And when you look at the unbelievable achievement of being in the Premier League for so long, winning a national trophy nearly 10 years ago now, for a club that has our humble beginnings, I suppose, is just fantastic. But that's in the past, and it's what happens for Ross County moving forward that now becomes a challenge. And I'll be honest, we're probably at a little bit of a crossroads where what we've been doing has been successful, and we've had great joy being part of that. But football moves, other clubs move, the football landscape's changed, society's changed, and again, it's just being able to try and move with the times. We still have our chairman that invests in the football club. There's a big drive to American investors coming into Scotland, and there's money from out with that wasn't there before.
yeah,
And it's us being able to, I suppose, know where we are, understand where we are, but still have that drive to be able to compete and be the best version of Ross County.
yeah. No, I appreciate that completely. There are clubs that I guess could be used by you guys as I wouldn't say shining light examples, but examples of what can be achieved. We had Jamie Swinney on the show from Falkirk a few weeks ago, who's done an incredible job. Great guy, Jamie, and obviously that they've achieved wonderful things against the odds, but against the bigger sides like Celtic and Rangers and even the Dundee clubs. Do you look at clubs like that, and you look at clubs like Hearts now on a march to win the SPL, probably, maybe? Do you look at those and say there's a kind of blueprint there we can almost follow, or is it there is a specific Ross County way and we're looking at success and we're going to do it our own way?
You mentioned Hearts and Falkirk, and Andrew and Jamie, the chief execs there, have done an unbelievable job. Certainly, always clearly two different models, and two different ways of doing things. But see, for us trying to have a blueprint of Falkirk and Hearts, it just doesn't go.
Yeah,
We're 3 hours from the Central Belt. I mean, Falkirk they were out the Championship. They were in the League One for a couple of years, and the job that Jamie and the guys in at Falkirk have done is an unbelievable job, and they've got so many things right, and they continually get so many things right after a long period of people would argue getting things wrong, I suppose.
yeah,
But I know circumstances, I suppose, in their control or out of their control. What they're doing now would be a wonderful blueprint for anybody. But even if we take Hearts out of the equation, obviously in Edinburgh and the investment they have from Tony Bloom and what they're doing with the Jamestown model and stuff like that, of course we would love to follow
yeah,
that blueprint and love to be able to do that at Ross County. But we clearly accept that that's never going to be the case. So we need to find a version that we can achieve and that we can follow. I mean, to use Falkirk as an example, they're 30 minutes from Edinburgh, 35 minutes from Glasgow. They're in a prime site geographically to be able to tap into not only on the pitch and regarding recruitment of players, but also businesses and investment and
yeah,
commercial stuff that they can bring in there is fantastic. I think speaking to Jamie recently, I think they're talking about 6,500, 7,000 season ticket holders now.
Yeah,
Again, that is nearly, that's nearly 2.5 times more season tickets than we've got, and we've got 50% of the village that have got a season ticket. So, you know,
right. Yeah,
yeah, huge credit and recognition to the two clubs that you've mentioned. But again, there's we need to do it a different way. We
yeah,
need to find a way that if we can use best practice and share best practice, we need to find a way of doing it in the Highlands. We need to find it in a way that suits our club and suits what we can achieve, I suppose, and then continually try to overachieve.
yeah. No, very well put. Talking about recognition, we can't ignore yours. You were voted CEO of the year by your peers, which is an incredible achievement. And what do you think that reflects, not just to your leadership, but Ross County as a club?
Listen, it was a huge surprise when obviously I got the award, but again, it probably coincided with it happened just after the season where we finished in the top six. So for Ross County, a big, as anybody that follows Scottish football will know, the holy grail for probably every club outside of Rangers and Celtic, and now Hearts and Hibs and Aberdeen, I suppose, all come into that equation. The two Dundee clubs. So already I've named seven big city clubs, and there's
Yeah,
only six places in the top six. So for us to achieve that was huge, and that was maybe a part of that was recognition of what Ross County was doing at that time. And again, it was me that got the award, but it was very much a club thing. It wasn't. It was just I was sitting in the role, and it was very much a reflection of what the club achieved. That probably brought myself and Ross County to the forefront. So for us to be able to bring success to the area, we really need everybody overachieving in every single department. That season, our football department 100% overachieved by getting into that top six, and equally, with being in the top six, how we opened the conversation where everything really depends on what happens on the pitch at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. So for the team to be successful on the pitch, it made it easier for our commercial department to be a lot more success than a lot easier to be successful than it would be if you're losing games. That's for sure.
yeah, completely. A couple more before I let you go. You touched on it earlier on, actually, but managing expectations is something that every CEO I speak to talks about. It's probably the biggest and most challenging part of the job. How do you manage those expectations? Because as much as you might talk about, being in the Highlands, a smaller fan base, things like that, football fans are still, very passionate about their club and they want the best for them, right? How do you manage the expectations and dreams that you'll share as well, right, as CEO, against the sustainable responsibilities and the realities of running a club?
It's a huge challenge, and it's a huge challenge. Um, a huge challenge for us right now, to be honest, because again, having been so long in the Premier League, we will almost take it for granted, me included, but I'm talking about our supporters, our sponsors, our stakeholders. They've been used to the Premier League for a long time and consistently for a long time. So we all want to be aspirational. We all want to reach for the stars. But again, sometimes the reality is that even what people would deem to be mediocre is actually us overachieving if we were to lay everything down. But
Yeah,
nobody wants to, me included, nobody wants to just accept mediocre. Nobody wants to accept just being there.
yeah,
And I suppose that's the driver. And our challenge is always saying, right, for us to even get close to what people's expectations are, is back to what we've already spoke about. Every single one of us need to overachieve. Every single one of us need to do something that's that we shouldn't be achieving, but we need to do that for us to manage that expectation and not. And I suppose where I could probably do it better, but I always beat myself up and around it, where I could come out and I could give everybody the reality. I could tell everybody exactly where we stand, but
yeah,
genuinely, where supporters and people will want to say that they want to be communicated to and they want to know exactly what's happening. sometimes they're not going to like what you're going to say. So it's that balancing bit to say, yeah, we're completely aspirational for going and trying to win the championship this season, which I said at the start of the season because that's what we wanted to do. We find
Mm.
ourselves in a position where we're a mile away from that. Didn't mean that that's not what we wanted to do, but from where for having so many years of overachieving, we're actually in a period right now where we're underachieving. So we need to accept that, and we need to face that up, and we need to double down on finding a way for us to be able to overachieve again.
Yeah, complete. You come across as somebody that kind of enjoys that, right? And whether others might see that as a bit strange, it's probably the reason why you're sat in the chair that you are, right? And how do you deal with that side of it? So, with the pressures for you personally, which are immense, and you're obviously dealing with that really well. Is there a constant soundboard for you? Somebody that you turn to? Do you talk publicly about, how you're dealing with things? Because it's an immense amount of pressure that you deal with, whether naturally or not, right?
Yeah, there is, and listen, it's all show. I'm really going home and lying in a dark room and shaking myself to sleep. No, it's not. Listen, listen, it's life, it's football, it's everything that you've been involved in since you were a kid. So you understand that. I do understand people's frustrations. I do understand when things haven't worked out because everything's risk, isn't it?
Yeah,
So every day you're taking risk in some shape or form, and it's just sometimes things work, sometimes don't. Things don't work, but you spoke about is there anybody I speak to, and there is. The way our club is set up is that my closest ally and my best point of contact is actually the chairman himself. So I'm really lucky for a person to be in the role that
mm,
I'm in, and it's been 5.5 years. It was 6 years at the end of the season. And to be able to tap into that knowledge and that know-how, not only in football, he's been the chairman for over 30 years, but more so in business and more so in people and culture and stuff like that. So I'm blessed that I've got that so close to me. And he does, and he has done for a long time, said to me, I would rather you made a decision and got it wrong than not make a decision. So I've kind of had that cushion, I suppose, in some of the
yeah,
decisions that I've made, and some of the decisions I've got wrong. I know there's been plenty that I've got wrong, and I'll face them up and I'll front them up like every other chief exec has to do. That goes without saying. But again, I'll go back to that managing the risk bit. Every decision
yeah,
that you make, there's a risk to it, and some are going to work, and some aren't going to work. And the ones that don't work, you can't then just sit back and watch everything unfold. When you make a bad decision, that means that you're then going to make another decision to try and get it right.
yeah,
And so every day, we speak about it. My daughter's at university doing an international business degree or whatever it is she's doing, and we speak about it often, and that is life, that's business, and that's football. Where if you were to look at your day, and you'll be the same with the businesses that you run, and you're every time, sometimes every conversation you have, there's a decision to be made.
yeah,
So you're constantly, every conversation you have, it doesn't matter if it's the groundsman, if it's commercial, if it's football, if it's the kit lady.
yeah,
Normally they're coming to speak to you because they're wanting an answer for something that they're needing to do. So I think the big thing for me is trying to make the decisions and trying to get as many of them right as you can. I never try to get a decision wrong.
yeah, yeah. No, for sure.
I never wake up and go, right, today I'm going to go and get that wrong.
Yeah,
So that's it. And I think everybody,
I'm in today.
yeah, I think you'll agree with me, and I think everybody else that's in that role will understand. It's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm fortunate, similar to you. I've worked with a lot of good people, and I'm really fortunate to do that. I asked Charlie Methven, the former Charlton and Sunderland CEO, who was obviously made famous by the Sunderland documentary and stuff on Netflix, and he actually did a great job. And some of the people that are now leading the Sunderland stuff, doing a brilliant job in the Premier League, Charlie put in place. And that's something that fans won't care about that now because it will be the people that are in the job doing it now. And I said, same sort of question. How do you deal with that? And he just said, look, my opinion is nobody asked us to take this job. I'm in this job because I accepted the job and I have to deal with it, good or bad, right? And it's very similar to you. But when you look back and just to wrap things up, when it eventually comes to an end, how would you like to be remembered from your kind of Ross County journey?
Um, listen, that that's for other people. That's for other people to say what how they would remember me. I think I've been 24 years at the football club now. I was 7 as a player, 23 years, 7 as a player, 23, 16 on the non-football side. So I I don't think anybody when I leave Ross County, if it's tomorrow or next week or in 10 years' time, I don't think anybody can say that I didn't give my absolute lot for anything I'd done, whether it was the academy, whether it was the first team, or whether it was sitting in the chief executive chair. I gave everything I've got. Um, I would like to think I've been relatively humble in the whole thing. I never pretend I've got everything right. I never pretend I've got all the answers. So, again, probably back to one of your earlier questions. I don't. I would rather be remembered for me and my own personality rather than some of the materialistic stuff that's happened and some of the stuff that we can look at, awards that were won or leagues that were won or cups that were won. They're all great and they're all in record books that people can look back at. But I think what would be important to me is that whatever I've tried to do for the right reason, and I've tried to do for the best of the football club and the people that's involved in it. So that'd be lovely if you could finish with that. But I would also not be naive enough to think that there would be other things said around us that because when you're in this seat, you're the one that's given bad news. You're the one that the responsibility falls on, and I completely accept that as well. So for every comment that maybe be made that that I gave everything and I was humble when I did it, there's going to be one that didn't like what I did and didn't like the decisions I made. And I think what you can't be is fragile. I don't think you can be. I don't think you can be in this role and think that everybody's going to like you. I've learnt that, and again, I don't think you'll ever master it, but you're continually trying to be at peace with yourself and regarding that you can look at the mirror and say, well, I got that wrong, and
Yeah,
I know the reason why I got it wrong, but I also know the reason why I made the decision I made. So I think anybody in this role will feel that. It's lonely sometimes. I think we all understand that as well. If you look across if you look across any business or any club, there's teams everywhere. There's pockets of
yeah,
teams, whether it's your sales team or your hospitality team or your football department team or your academy team. It's teams, and sometimes I don't think the chief exec sits within a team. Um, unless you're talking about the whole team.
yeah.
So I think that's another thing that people will relate to that do our job, whether that be in football or in business.
Yeah, that's beautifully wrapped up. I think I was hoping you were going to be sensational and say, "Well, I'm like the Ross County Roy of the Rovers" or something like that. But I think you might be a little bit too humble for that.
Aye, no, I never said that because I definitely wasn't. Ross County Roy the Rovers. So I couldn't even trying to pin that on myself. I just couldn't do that. That just wouldn't be true. That just wouldn't be true.
Fair enough, Stephen. Listen, I've really enjoyed this. I appreciate you taking the time to give us your insight and a bit of a look into your world and what it's like to be CEO of Ross County. Wish you guys all the best for the rest of the season, and fingers crossed for getting you back in the SPL as quickly as possible. Hopefully, if we make it as far north as the Highlands one day, we'll drop in and have a game. But in the meantime, really appreciate it.
No, appreciate it. Great speaking to you. Thanks very much and all the best. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.